Hello and welcome. I'm going to do this video the sort of opposite way of what I normally do because it's a sort of pattern break, and put out a reminder of the One-to-Juan personal tarot card readings. I've had a spate of requests following on from a recent video, and the feedback has been consistently good. As mentioned previously, this is not going to give you a prediction with a tarot card reading. What it will do is look at your present situation. If you like, you could say it's like a pole shift. Maybe because you're in the thick of things, you're seeing things from a negative perspective. So the readings with these cards will actually give you, shall we say, an outside perspective and put things into context. Because the things that we often see as negative are actually blessings in disguise. And beyond that, and I'm currently engaged with a number of people beyond the tarot card readings where they're going through some very difficult circumstances for various reasons. And so I'm here to offer sort of counselling, offer advice, looking at your situation from what you tell me, and then suggesting that, well, have you considered it from this side rather than from that side? Giving you sort of new ideas, new ways to overcome these challenges. I also would like to announce that there is going to be a new channel as part of the Wahnfried profile. Wahnfried, if you're wondering, it stands for Freedom from Madness. And that is what is offered. This external world can seem very crazy, and it's very easy to get caught up in all the dramas and all the stories that circulate. But ask yourself, how do any of these things really affect your personal life? You are, whether you realize it or not, you are a co-creator, or you have the ability to find that inside yourself, and that is something I would love to help you do, so you can actually take control of your situation, control of your life, and turn things around for yourself. As with the tarot card readings, there's no fee. Rather, I would let it stand that if you feel that what I can offer you has benefited you, then it's a donation only basis. And it's entirely up to you how much you donate. It helps put food on the table for myself and for the 6 cats here. Currently 6 cats, there could be more turn up any time. So it could be a growing feline community. Time will tell on that. But we'll get on to the subject proper of this video in a moment. But what I wanted to speak particularly about, and it's something I keep forgetting to mention on the last few videos, this year is 2026. So it marks the 200th death by centenary of the composer Carl Maria von Weber. It may be that you've never heard of him. And because he died the year before Beethoven, and he was born, I think it's 16 years after Beethoven, he's very much overshadowed. But what a terrific composer, what a huge influence on the composers that followed. Certainly Frédéric Chopin and Franz Liszt held him in high regard, and you can almost hear in both those composers' works the influence of Weber. He is regarded as the father of German opera, freeing the opera from the restrictive rules that Italian opera had sort of imposed. So Weber is very much a huge central figure, and I invite you to listen to his works. You can find 4 playlists on my old WAB-ART Productions channel. The new channel is going to replace that. So we'll now get on to the, I'll put a link in the description. We'll now get on to the topic proper of this video, and that is about music. Now, music is a huge umbrella term. It covers all genres of music. But if we look at, because it's always about going back to source. So on the one hand, you would have had what were effectively the reporters of events and things who would travel and share news. And from that would be generated the town crier that would share important news to a community. From this would have developed the poets, and then settings to music. So you have travelling minstrels. So that's one avenue of music. The other one would come out of religious ceremonies and things, but the music then came into its own, particularly with the likes of Johann Sebastian Bach and George Frederick Handel, both born in, I believe, the year 1685. Now, in this world, we walk in 2 realities. On the one hand, you have the external world, and then you have your internal world. You also have certain things that have a sort of routine, the mundane daily things. For me, it is the feeding of the cats, because they know when it's breakfast time, regardless of whether there's a clock change. But what you can actually will benefit you, because if we get stuck in predictable routines, things do not change. So it is about breaking patterns. So I'm going to offer you a challenge here, connected with music. Now, what is regarded as classical music, certainly in school, it seems to be one of those subjects that is made to seem boring and unpopular, unless a child is particularly gifted and they take up the violin or the piano, for example. And they can seem sort of misfits, a little bit nerdy to everybody else. But there is a saying that what is popular is not true, and what is unpopular is true. So I invite you to make a radical change in your life. Whatever genre of music you've been listening to up till now, I'm challenging you to just put all that to one side for now and immerse yourself in classical music. Now, there's a huge variety from the sort of Baroque to what is called the classical era, to the heroic age with, say, Beethoven, the romantic age, which is roughly the same period. We're talking the early 19th century by this stage, and then you have the late romantic stage. It is during this period that a lot of the geniuses emerged in this world, not least some of the great composers of the past. But where are they today? Generally, for a genius to emerge, or geniuses to emerge in large number, or certainly larger numbers than today, requires an expansive, growing culture. That is where you had the likes of Beethoven and Mozart suddenly spring up. Generally, with these composers, they don't have a sort of lineage where their parents and grandparents were also composers. They just had this inbuilt talent. But that's not happening today. And why is that? There are two very subtle bodies in this reality. One is the more readily apparent, the one that will try and draw you into all the negativity, so you're in a perpetual state of fight, flight, freeze or fawn, not being given enough time to yourself to sort of weigh things up. Now, one of the things that will become very apparent with what is called classical music, what I would call real music, you don't have this incessant drum beat like you do with a lot of other genres of music. Yes, you do get drum rolls from the timpani section of an orchestra, for example, but they're there to add to the dramatic effect in a particular point in a piece of music. But give yourself maybe a week or 2 weeks, just immerse yourself in nothing but classical music and see if it makes a difference. It is often described that classical music is something to relax to. Certainly the slow movements in symphonies and concertos can seem that way. But when you penetrate deeper and you're not just listening to it as background noise, but you come into the approach to it that it's almost like a ritual or a ceremony. More will come through. That music, a particular piece of music you could hear 10 times, and each time you're going to get something different out of it. And of course, you have many artists. You can have the same symphony, and it can be a recording live or a studio recording with a different orchestra and a different conductor, and that can make a huge difference to the effect of the music, because the conductor will most likely have a overall vision of how they see the music, and they will bring out little differences in that music. So you could hear a piece of music that you become familiar with, and then you try listening to that piece of music with a different conductor and orchestra, and it's like, oh, I hadn't noticed that before. They've slowed the tempo down, or they've speeded it up, or they've encouraged the violins or the string section, and it does make a very different effect. Like everything, it is always going back to source, because this other subtle body is what is called the folk soul. That is the thing that would actually benefit humanity as a whole by going back to sources. And certainly for European culture, you're not going to find a better place than to immerse yourself in what is called classical music in the different sections from the Baroque to the late Romantic. So I invite you to try that and see if that starts to make a difference in your life, because it is all about breaking pattern. Generally, I don't often like a piece of music the first time I hear it. I might like sections of it, but it takes time. It takes a little bit of effort. It's time well spent. So by the third time you hear it, it's now become more familiar, because you're stepping into new territory that you may not have done before. And maybe some of you that are listening to this are actually put off by that idea. But if you can move past yourself and just give this a try, do it as an experiment upon yourself to see if it makes a difference in your life. Because certainly with these drum beats, these fast drum beats, they're keeping you on edge. And not only that, if you consider it's often talked about short attention spans. So your popular songs, pop music in all its forms, are generally sort of no more than about 3 or 4 minutes. So very short attention spans, almost getting instant gratification, a sort of dopamine hit. But when it comes to listening to a concerto or a symphony or a sonata, for example, they could be anything from maybe 10 minutes to an hour and a half. It's, as a comparison, it's the difference between sitting there and vegetating in front of a television or making the effort and going to a theatre and seeing a live performance. And certainly there is a huge difference. You can almost feel if it is a recording of a live performance. Yes, you will get a little bit of coughing from the audience and the shuffling of pages between the movements in a symphony or a concerto. But if it's a good performance, or if it's something that can communicate something to you, you may also pick up on that sort of reciprocal feeling from the audience, because music is two-way. It's not just about the artists and the performance. It's the interaction with the listener. It's the two things together. I certainly get a lot of inspiration out of it. I love to immerse myself in particular composers. And I will be launching a new music channel which will have a lot of playlists for you to sample, right from the Baroque to the late Romantic, centered mainly on the Germanic-speaking world, particularly Germany, Austria, but also other areas of Europe. You have a huge variety with classical music. You've got all the Russian composers. Then you even have English composers like Sir Edward Elgar, which is similar, but has a more sort of English flavour that may suit you more. It's about being different. It's about breaking pattern, how you can change your life. And I feel the art is getting to the heart of the matter. And in doing so, you are going back to a source of something that is in our blood. Reawakening that folk soul through the source of the culture. So there's the challenge for you. It's up to you. No pressure. You may try it and it's just not for you, because art is subjective. There's no right or wrong to this. But also keep in mind that it's often spoken about that Hollywood has all these rather dubious and questionable aspects, but also the music industry, to some degree, is not that different. Because why is it there are certain performers, particularly soloists, pianists and cellists and violinists, that are heavily promoted by these record companies? And it begs the question, what about the natural talents? You're not going to get better than if you can find, say, a Beethoven symphony that is performed by something like the Berlin Philharmonic under Herbert von Karajan. You're going to get a really authentic performance, which you would not get the same effect if it was a performance by the Tokyo Philharmonic, for example. It's going back to source, and also with the orchestra and the conductor. To use a quote from the television series Inspector Morse, it's an Oxford crime, it takes an Oxford man to solve it. Which is in a way of saying, go back to the heart, go back to the source. And a lot of European history has been deliberately covered up. But in more recent times, you have the essence of the greatness of Europe within that. And there is a huge variety, a huge spectrum to choose from. The difference between what is called classical music and popular music. Popular music is songs. That is not the same thing as classical music at all, because composers can write music and they can also compose songs. But in the pop world, they're just writing songs. It doesn't come across in quite the same way. That's not to write off all popular music. There are some very inspired pieces. There are some pieces of music with very deep esoteric messages in them, for certain. But when you move over to the classical music and you give yourself more time and you allow yourself to really feel that music, it does make a huge difference. Right, we're now up to 21 minutes. I didn't intend this to be quite this long. But there's the challenge. And just as a reminder, back to the start of the video, do consider the one-to-one personal tarot card readings. And beyond that, if you are struggling in any way, facing difficulties, facing challenges, the door is always open here. And I would love to be able to help you turn things round for yourself. So as always, I'm going to end here and say unconditional love to you all.